Hi, welcome to this video from Augmenting Creativity, which is a workshop that's running at Creativity Cognition 2022. In this series of videos, we're giving an introduction to a range of accessible, fairly simple AI tools that might be able to be brought into the creative process in some way. And the tool that we're going to be looking at in this video is called VQGAN+CLIP. So this tool is a text-to-image generator. So similar to some of the other tools we've looked at in this series, it allows you to provide a text prompt, so a description, a couple of sentences of text, a phrase, and then generate images that respond to that prompt. It's pre-trained with some image models, so you can't really train it yourself, unlike something like Runway ML. But what it does allow you to do is to upload images. So you can upload one or two images, perhaps of your own work or from an artist or designer or objects in a style that you're interested in, and it will use those as part of the image generation process. So you can sort of direct the images towards a certain style or to pick up on elements of an object or an image that you're interested in. So that's why we're covering it in this particular video. Out of all the tools that we're looking at in this series, this is the one that kind of involves some code. Now, we've said that all these tools are code-free. That's the case with this one. You don't actually have to do any coding, and don't worry if you're not from a coding background. If you don't know how to code in things like Python, don't worry. What we're going to show you today is a code file that's already been laid out. It's been laid out in a tool called Colab, and it's all set ready to go. So you don't really need to change that much. There's a few parameters that you need to change, like, for example, adding a text prompt, but there's a nice, easy interface for doing that. So don't be scared of the look of this. It kind of looks perhaps the least kind of user-friendly of all the tools we're looking at, but it is fairly easy to get up and running with. It's also free to use, so unlike something like Runway, it runs in the browser, it's free code. You need to have a Google account to get up and running with it, but apart from that, there's not actually costs involved. It runs free in the cloud. So to get running with it, what you need to do is go to the particular web page for this code. There's a short URL on the screen here, and we'll put the link on the website as well. So once you've loaded this URL, it will take you to the Colab website. And this is a platform where you can design and run code in the clouds. So it's a useful service for doing this kind of a machine learning type work. As I say, this has all been kind of set up for you, so there's not a great deal that you need to do. And you can see acknowledgements to the people who've already done this, including Catherine Crowson, at the top of this page. So we're using work that's already been provided to us by others. I'll take you through what the changes that you need to make in order to get this file working, and then we'll run through and see actually how to get the runtime up and running. So if you look at this page, you'll see that it's split up into different blocks, and you can see there are various stages of running this code, and each one has a little title, so you can see what's happening at each point. So it's setting up a GPU, it's installing the libraries that it needs, it's selecting a model and downloading that, and then it's actually running the model itself and doing the work that we've asked it to do. Now, if all those terms are not familiar to you, don't worry. You don't really need to know what's happening at each one of these stages. You just need to know which parts you need to change. So the parts we're going to change are down here in the parameters. So if you scroll down to this section, you'll see that there are some text boxes here which we can change, and they're fairly easy to change. So the most important one really is the top one, where it says text. Now this is your text prompt. So you can put in something here that you want to create an image of. So I'm going to put in bunch colourful flowers. Okay, so you've got your text prompt in there. At this stage, that's sort of all you need. The only other thing perhaps to look at is the max iterations. So as with other tools that we've looked in this series, the image will be generated in a sort of iterative way. Each time it will try and get closer and closer to the prompt that you've given it. And to begin with, it might not look like a bunch of flowers at all. It'll just look like noise. It's the first thing that it's producing. And then slowly you'll see kind of the elements that you've described hopefully coming into the image. And it might take several hundred iterations in order to get it to the point that you're interested in, an image that kind of looks like your prompt. So if you leave this as -1, this max iterations, basically it will run forever, or at least it will run until the service kind of kicks you out, perhaps because you've been running it for too long. If you want to avoid that, then you could put a maximum number in. So I might say put 1,000 in. What that means is that if you are running this, it's running in the background, it might take several minutes to run, it might take half an hour. It just means that if you're leaving it, it's not going to max out, it's not going to keep running this forever and ever until you're kicked out of the service. It will stop at 1,000, which is probably a good point to be looking at what it's produced. The other thing to look at here is the image interval. It's 50. And what that means is it's going to be producing an image that you can see here in the browser every 50 iterations. So bear that in mind. We're sort of seeing a slow iteration of this image emerging. So once you've changed that, that's all you really need to do, at least to begin with. You've got a text prompt. It's going to run and run. It's going to give us 1,000 iterations, and then we'll be able to see it. So what we need to do now is actually just run this code. So you don't need to look really at anything else in here, not at least to begin with, not unless you want to start playing around with other parameters. So we can run this. So what we're going to do is go up to the runtime, so on the menu here, runtime, and we're going to say run all. Now, the first thing it's going to do the first time you run this is ask you some questions and give you some warnings. The first warning you get is that this is not authored by Google. So we're using Colab, which is a Google service, and it just wants to point out, okay, well this isn't actually Google code, it's taken from GitHub. Well, that's fine, we're not worried about that. Next thing it's asking is saying that this requires high RAM. So because it's doing this image generation, it is using quite a lot of RAM on the cloud service. And what that means is that there might be some limits. So because this is a free service, we're not using Colab Pro, we're just using the free service. It may kind of kick us out after a while. It may stop the code working. If we run this all day, every day, it will come to a stop at some time. And actually, if you don't want those kind of limits, then you can upgrade to Colab Pro. But for this test and for doing light work, then that's absolutely fine. You just click OK. Once you've gone through those kind of messages, you'll see in the top here, it's showing us the status of the runtime. So this is connecting us to the cloud service, which is going to do the work for us. And we can get some details of it there. Once it's connected, it will then start going through these blocks of code that we looked at from top to bottom. And you can see once it's completed a piece of code, you get a green tick next to it. And when it's actually running a particular section, the stop sign will appear and there'll be the circle going around, letting you know that it's still working on that. And the first thing it's doing, as I say, is kind of doing all the preliminary work of downloading libraries, installing the model, and that might take a few minutes. So you might need to kind of leave it here for a few minutes just to get going. What we're interested in is once it's got down as far as the parameters and then fire up the AI. So the code in that section is where it actually starts producing the images. So we can kind of wait for it to get down to that section and then see what it does. Okay, so that took a few minutes to do. It takes longer the first time you run it. On subsequent runs, when it's already downloaded the libraries, that should happen a little bit quicker. Once you get to this section, fire up the AI, it will then start generating images, and we should see after a minute or two some images appearing. And it will generate a new image every few minutes, and each time, hopefully, it should get kind of closer and closer to the description that you've given it. So the first one we can see here is noise, effectively. So it will start by just having random noise and then using that as a starting point for generating an image. you can, in the parameters, give it an image to start with. So you could give it an image that you're interested in and have it sort of start turning that, converting that into the target image, into the description that you've given it. So that can give some interesting results sometimes. But as default, it will just start with this kind of noise, this blurry image, and then after that, as we see here, it starts building onto that the description that you've given it. So we can see straight away this is looking like quite vibrant flowers, colourful flowers that the description we've given it. As we let this go through, as I say, every kind of 50 iterations, it will drop a new image into this part of the code here. So we'll be able to see that. We'll be able to download that if we want to. And you can kind of see the progress of how things are going. And once it gets to a stage that you like, you can stop this process. So once it's gone for a few iterations, you can say, actually, I'm quite interested in that. Just close the process down, download the images, and then do what you like with them. We'll let it go for a few more iterations, and then we'll do that. Okay, so once it gets to a stage where actually you're quite liking the results that are coming out, if you're happy then to stop the process, then you can download some images and then do that. I'll show you first where to look for these images. Obviously they're appearing in the browser here, so you can take them out of there. But if you go over to the left-hand menu here, you can see there's a file icon, and that's going to give us access to the files that it's using as part of this process, and also the things that it's generating. And the folder to look for in here is steps. So if you kind of drop that down, you'll see these are all the steps that it's gone through. And there's lots in here. Remember, it's only showing on the screen every 50th step, but actually all the other ones are in here. And you can click these and you can download them. So if we wanted to download the latest one, last one that is on the screen, then you can go to that and you can click on the little dots, and then you can click download. It'll download it to your computer. And then you can play around with it and do what you like. If you want to stop this process, you can kind of stop the process here. Sometimes that can take a while because it's kind of processing. So a kind of quick way of just stopping the process altogether is to go here and then restart the runtime. So if we do this one, restart runtime, it will kill the kind of processes which are running, and then that allows us to start again, basically. So if we wanted then to change some of the parameters, we can then do that. So we've got some images here that perhaps are interesting, you can start playing around with. If you wanted to run again with the same prompt, you could do that, and you would probably get some slightly different results. You could, of course, change the parameters. So go back to the parameter section, you could change the prompt there. But the other thing I want to show you just in this video is how to set a target image. So if you're interested perhaps in getting the images to conform perhaps to a certain style, or if you want to mix in kind of elements of a style maybe from your own work, then you can do that. We've looked in previous videos at things like Runway, where you can train a model with hundreds of images of your work or whatever style it is that you're interested in. This is a bit different. We're not going to train a model, but we can upload some images or even a single image, which then the process will use and draw on when it's creating its image. So, and we do that through this target images here. So in this target image prompt here, we do need to put in the name of a file that we're going to use. Before we do that, though, we need to upload the file. And you do that in this same file section. So under the folder icon there, there's another icon here for uploading the file. So upload to session storage. So if we do that, we'll open up a file dialog. We can then choose a file. Now I'm going to choose this one here. This you may recognize as just a selection of illustrations from the illustrator Eric Carle. So if I upload this, it should then use it as part of its prompt. So just like we're giving it a text prompt, asking it to create an image following that text, we can also add this into the mix and it will use that as part of the kind of the prompt that it's using. So this is the image I want, so I just click open. It gives you a reminder here that the uploaded files that we upload here, they're not going to be kept forever. They're going to be kept whilst we're using this runtime, once we've got this session open here. But if we close this down, move away, they're not going to stay in there. Now, it is possible to run this basically from your Google Drive, so to set it up so it's on your drive, and then files and things that you're creating will be available to you afterwards. And if you wanted to do that, then click OK here. You can see there's a copy to drive icon there. So you could do that, set up on your drive, and then your images would be kept for longer. But for doing small tests like this, it's not really necessary. We can just use it in the runtime, and it doesn't matter then if we close it down and it's gone. So we've uploaded our file here, so carl3.jpg. So that's what we need to add in here. So this is about as codey as these sessions get. We just need to copy that name. So carl3.jpg. And it should then start using that as a target image. Now, if you wanted to put in more than one image, you can see there's a little instruction for how to do that up here. If you want to put in more than one, you need to use the pipe icon as a separator. So actually, if we wanted to upload maybe some more images and include those, we could put the pipe icon in and then just put in carl4.jpg if we'd uploaded another one called that. But in this case, actually, one is quite interesting on its own, so we'll just do this. So this is the image that we're going to use, and apart from that, all the parameters are going to stay the same. So we've still got the same description, it's still going to give us a bunch of flowers, but it's going to throw this into the mix as well, so hopefully we'll use that as part of its generation. So to run this, it's the same deal, just go up to Runtime, and then hit Run All. As I say, this should happen a little bit more quickly, because it's already downloaded, things like the libraries and the model that it's going to use, but it may still take a few seconds to kind of fire up and start running the code and seeing the images, so we'll just let it run through that now. Okay, so that's fired up again. So doing the same process, still giving us hopefully some images of flowers, but starting with just this sort of blurry, noisy image to begin with. So when we see the new images coming through, hopefully what we should see is that it's starting to incorporate visual elements from our target image as well, from our uploaded image. So we'll see if we can kind of see those in some of the results that it's giving us. Okay. So even in the first image, we can see that the style is certainly different to the one we had previously. It's slightly less vibrant, it maybe looks a bit flatter, it's copying that illustrative style perhaps. As we let it go through and generate more, we might see kind of further images which are which show this the target image style in the new generated image. Okay, so we can see now that this is definitely different to the previous style we had. It's using the kind of colour palette, it's using some of these visual elements that we can recognise from the Eric Carl image that we uploaded in the first place. So this shows you that really, even just with one image, it's not really a training process, but just by kind of uploading an image, perhaps from your own work or from a style that you're interested in, we can get it to generate images which are perhaps aligned with that, perhaps using those elements. And you can use this then to kind of combine styles, combine things which are a bit different and create perhaps unexpected results, or a synthesis of styles that it might be hard to do in other ways. So this is another tool that you can use. And although this one is slightly more involved, the interface is slightly harder perhaps to get to grips with the first time, it's still fairly simple, and hopefully it can give you some interesting results which can enhance your creativity.